All right, so right off the bat, let me just say that I think this is a pretty tough question. All right, so if you're struggling with this, don't beat yourself up about it. It's a tough question. So a recent survey of a town found that 73% of households had children living with them. The margin of error of the survey was 1.5%. Of the households that reported having children, the average number of children reported living in those households was 1.4 with a margin of error of zero point 0.2. If the total number of households that responded to the survey was this number, then what is the estimated lowest number of children total in the town? All right, so we've got a couple different margins of error in here. One is for the number of households that said they had children living with them. So 73% plus or minus 1.5%, that's the margin of error, have children living with them. And then the number of children reported was 1.4 plus or minus zero point 0.2. And it's wanting to know what is the estimated lowest number of children living in the town. So that tells me that on all of these margins of error, I want to use the lower value. So I want to use the lowest number of households having children living with them, and I want to use the lowest number of children per household. Again, that all sounds confusing, and you might have to read this several times or watch this video back a couple times, but stick with it. You can do this problem. So lowest number of children would give me the bottom side or the lower margin of error on all of these. So let's start with the 73%. So 73% of the houses that responded to the survey said they had children, and that was plus or minus 1.5%. And again, we want to go with the lowest number here because we're trying to find the lowest number of children possible in the town. So do 73 minus the 1.5, and that gives you 71.5%. So 71.5% of the households said they had children. Now let's look at the number of children. So if I look at the number of children, that was 1.4 per household. And I should point out, my students always have trouble when I say, yeah, they've got 1.4 children per house. And they, of course, say, well, how can you have zero point 0.4 of a child? Well, you can't, but this is averages. So if you take 3 plus 2 and you divide that by 2 to find the average of that, you would get 2.5. Sorry. You would get 2.5. And again, that doesn't mean anybody has half a child. It means one household had three, one household had two, and you take the average of that and you get 2.5. Okay, so don't worry about that 1.4. So again, that's 1.4 children per house plus or minus zero point 0.2. And we want to go with the lowest end of that. So we're going to go with 1.2 children per household. So now we need to find out how many total children there are using this data. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out how many households have children using this 71.5%. And so I'm going to take the number of people in the survey, 120,765, and I want to find out what 71.5% of that is. So I take the 71.5 and divide it by 100, or I move the decimal two places to the left, and then I'm going to multiply this by 0.715. And again, that's just the 71.5% divided by 100. And when I do that, I kind of cheated. I got the number written down here. I'm going to have to write it below it because it's not going to fit. I get 86,346.975. So I'm not going to round anything until I get to the end. When in doubt, it's best to wait and round at the end. Okay, so that's the number of households using the 71.5% that said they have children. Now I want to see how many children they have. So we're going to take the low average of 1.2. And so each of these households, if they had 1.2 kids, how many kids would they have? Well, we're just going to multiply 1.2 times the 86,346.975. I don't know why I didn't write the 9. There we go. What an ugly 5. My fault. So I multiply those together, and this time I'm going to round it because this is my final answer. And so it wouldn't make sense in my final. Well, actually, just look at your answers. You could have decimals, but all the answer choices are rounded to the nearest whole number. So that's what I'm going to do. And when you multiply those, you get 103,616. 103,616. So you get answer D. All right. So again, that's a pretty tough question. Go back and watch the video again and look for some more problems that have margin of error if you need more practice with that. If they want to know just to point out, if they want to know the maximum number of children, then we would have done the same thing, but instead of using the bottom part of the margin of error, so instead of subtracting it, we would have added it on both of these. And then we could have found the maximum number of children in that town. All right. So keep working hard and you will master the math.